All right, everybody, here we go with the very first lesson in the very first section in the very first chapter of Math 8. So here we go. Okay. This section is going to be all about interpreting graphs, right? And using graphs to tell stories, but also being able to complete and create stories based on a graph, understanding the relationship between the x and the y, right? As one thing is changing, what's going on. Okay. So what we've got right here is we've got a graph where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is someone's distance from home. Okay. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and match one of these three stories to this graph. Which of these three stories does this graph kind of represent? Okay. So I'm going to give you a second to go ahead and read through those now and then come up with your answer. All right, so I'm going to go through each one pretty quickly. Tom took his dog for a walk to the park. He set off slowly and then increased his speed. Well, as I look at the graph, it looks like he's covering, in this very first part, he's covering a lot of distance in not very much time. But then here, it looks like he's getting further away, but it seems to be slower, right? He's not covering as much distance, not getting as far away in even more time. So that to me doesn't sound like he's starting off slow and then speeding up. That sounds like he's starting quickly and then gets a little slower. So I think A is out, right? I think we can definitely get rid of A. All right. Tom rode his bike east from his home up a steep hill. After a while, the slope eased off. Okay. At the top of the hill, he raced down the other side. Now, when I hear these, this sounds like speed, right? And if our y-axis right here was speed, right, he raced up the hill, looks like he was going really fast, right? And then eased off, right, ended up going a little bit slower. But it doesn't really tell me anything about how far away from the home he is. So I'm not sure it's B. I'm going to leave it possibly, but then we'll come back to it in just a little bit. Okay. Now, the next thing, C, he went for a jog, right? And at the top of the road, he bumped into a friend and his pace slowed. All right. So it looks like he's jogging, going at a certain speed, right? Getting far away from his house. And then here his pace slowed, right? He's getting further away, but he's doing it at a slower rate. Okay. When Tom left, his friend walked quickly back to his home. Okay, there we go. There we go. So, right, it looks like we're going back to the house. The distance from home is getting smaller. I feel pretty confident saying that this one has got to be C. Right? Now, normally we would be doing this in groups, or doing this part in groups. Instead, we have to kind of do them individually, so things are going to be a little bit different. Okay. What you're going to have on the next page is you're going to have 4 different graphs. They're broken into sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what I want you to do is come up with your own story that kind of fits each one of those graphs. Okay. I'll give you an example in here real quick. So for example, I'm going to do similar ones that they did before. I'm going to say that my x-axis is time, so as time goes by. And then on my y, I'm going to say distance from zombies. You'll find this year that I have an odd fascination with zombies, and I like to include them in all of my math projects. Okay, distance from zombies. So on here, if we're looking at this, it looks like for the first part, it looks like the distance that this person is, let's just call him Sam, because why not? It looks like the distance Sam is from the zombies. Sam, it doesn't really change, so Sam just notices the zombie standing there. And then the second part, Sam starts walking slowly away from the zombie. Third part, it looks like he has to go a lot faster, but then it looks like, he somehow gets closer to the zombie. So I'm going to interpret that as Sam runs from the zombie and hides, but the zombie gets closer. And the last part, it looks like he's just kind of running and going on forever, right? This little arrow tells me that's going to go on forever. So for part 4 here, I'm going to say Sam runs away from the zombie forever. It's back on the screen as you can see it. So that would be my story to kind of represent this graph.